Welcome to the Shrink Down. We are four lifelong friends, also licensed clinical psychologists, who are going to be talking about things that pop up on social media and the news. We thank you for listening in today and welcome back anyone who's listens to our first two podcasts. Today, we're going to be talking about phone use, screen time, social media, all the things. What sparked our interest in this was Jonathan Haidt is a psychologist who came out with a book recently called The Anxious Generation. And he's been interviewed a ton. I'm sure you've probably seen or heard of him. He has a great Instagram where he's on Instagram and he posts some really good, just like little bits of information. His book is really dense. It's really good, but it's dense. So that's like a really good place to just get some snippets. But we've all seen posts about, using too much screen time isn't good for kids, but it's not just kids, it's also adults. So today we're going to be talking about use in both adults and kids. Before we get into it today, we are going to be sharing our 4-minute faves. This is where we share either a book that we love, a movie, it could be a hack, it could also be a beauty product. So something that we have loved for a long time, some kind of OG favorite of ours, or something new that we've come across. So let's get into it today. Wilhelmina, what are you sharing with us today?
So I'm going to bring back an oldie but a goodie. I have been reading Untangled by Lisa Damour. It is a book that was put out several years ago. In fact, I think she's written many books since Untangled. And it goes through, it really talks about how parents can navigate the teen years in girls specifically. And I'm reading it because my daughter just turned 12 and we are starting to enter the hormones, the emotions. And I found like myself questioning like, oh my gosh, what is going on? How do I manage this? And what I love about this book is that she really approaches adolescence from like, there's so many things that are normal. Like they're going from children to adults. And there are ways that they sort of break away from childhood into adulthood. And there are so many things that are so normal that are scary for us as parents because they kind of become different people, but they're all normal. So she says, here's the 7 kind of stages you can look for. Here's what's happening within them. Here's what is normal. Here's what you can do as parents to like navigate that. And then she also kind of gives some snippets of like, if this is beyond this, then here are some resources too. But so many of the things that like myself, even like I've been like scared and sort of sad because I'm like, what happened to my little girl?
Yeah, right.
And she's like, this is normal. This
Right.
is all normal. They're practicing adulthood. They're, having lots of hormones and they're breaking away from their childhood. And so it's been so helpful for me. I'm listening to it and I keep kind of plugging away. And then when my daughter has another meltdown, I can kind of, Lisa, talk to me.
Right.
Tell me what to do.
It's her view of the world is changing, right? The lens is changing, and that's confusing, right?
It is,
so
right.
That's where you're seeing some of that kind of turmoil with the emotions. As I think kids are very, when they're little, it's like it's just them in the world, and now all of a sudden, they're getting older, and they're like, oh wait, there's other people in the world, right? And how do I interact with them, and how do I engage with them, and so it's also. She may not realize it, but I think it's scary for her too, probably at times, right?
Yep. And we've noticed that when she has, when she's overtired, and like yesterday she had a big meltdown and she had just come from this like babysitting course that she's taking, like babysitting for success. And so she's learning to like, here's what I do. And she came home and she literally had the biggest meltdown. And we were like, what happened? And all of a sudden we're like, oh, this happened 2 days ago after the babysitting class as well. And it was sort of like
overwhelming.
Like this idea that she would then be the person in charge. She would be, and it made so much sense to us that we were able to just sort of sit with her and be, and even though it seemed insane, at one point my husband brought her water and she's like, Dad's poisoning my water. And I'm like, well, no, he's not. Okay. Okay. It's okay. We're just going to sit here and Just
You know
be.
what? Your recommendation is such a good reminder, Wilhelmina, for everybody that just because we have studied all of this and we know all of this, when it's our own kiddo, we go to the resources as well. So we're big fans of, practicing what we preach.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Terry, what are you loving and sharing with us today?
Okay. So we actually touched on this person last episode, Demi Moore. And about 6 months ago, I was with my kids at the library, just looking for something to check out. And on the shelf was Demi Moore's memoir. I believe it's called Inside Out. I forgot. It's Demi Moore's memoir. I'll find out the exact title. And I am partial to memoirs as it is. I like reading about different people's lives, historical figures, current people who are still alive, not alive. And
JFK.
yes, I'm a big JFK buff.
Yes.
And JFK Jr. Let's not forget about him, the most handsomest man in the world. Still. And it was a great read. It was an ode to the 80s and the Brat Pack and all of those movies. And I was born in 1981. So a lot of what they referenced, I was a kid, but I remember mid 80s and being a kid and the movies coming out. And it was just such a lovely, wonderful read. I have such a deeper appreciation for Demi Moore as an actress and a person. What originally caught my eye was I was curious about her marriage to Bruce Willis. And I remember that being in the media a while back, and then her marriage to Ashton Kutcher. So that's what sort of sparked my interest in, I'm going to give this a read. But she goes through her childhood, her adolescence, all of her different events in adulthood. And it is just a really good, easy read. It's a fun read, like a beach read. So I would recommend it.
How does it rank with Rob Lowe? Because you gave me Rob Lowe's memoir, his first one.
I liked that one too,
and I loved that.
Yeah,
it was so good.
On par. I loved Rob Lowe's memoir, and I loved On Par.
Because similar, it talked about the 80s. It talked about his rise, like his initial rise, to the top in such a short period of time. That was so good.
Yeah,
so good. Such a good recommendation you gave me.
Yeah,
awesome. All right, Lauren, what are you loving and sharing with us today?
So this week in particular, this is not new, but what I'm loving and sharing is Vicks on socks before kids go to bed when they have a cold. Do you guys do this?
That is old school. I've heard of it.
I know. This is not new, but when I tell you, I am so thankful for this is my fave this week. Both my kids came down with that. Oh, we're back to school for 3 weeks cold. That everybody, I swear, across the nation is struggling with right now. If you're a parent, whatever germs it is. Now, thankfully, my kiddos just got that cold. But the Vicks on socks before they went to bed, I know there's zero research behind it, but it's for me, it's like chicken soup, right? And how that makes you feel better. It helps them sleep. It makes them feel better, whether it's placebo or not. They get over those colds in zero time. So Vicks on socks.
Do you put it on, do you rub it on the foot and then put the sock over it? Or do you put it in the sock?
On the sock. Good question.
You smear it inside. Got it.
No, so I turn the sock inside out, smear a good layer on the bottom of the sock, and then put the sock on the feet.
I'm going to try this.
My boys love it. We've been doing this forever because I think us as 80s children, we grew up with this, right?
I feel like Vicks is one of those things fix it all.
Right? It's like Windex
on the chest.
It's like Windex exactly. What is it? My big pack.
Yes, Vicks.
Seriously. And we love Vicks in our household. But again, this week, my husband was traveling. Both boys had a cold at, of course, different times because it's never at the same time. And I'm telling you, Vicks on socks, and they sleep well. And then that good sleep knocks it right out of them. So pretty simple, but a good reminder to everybody. Vanessa, what you got?
So I'm going to be sharing a makeup product. So the reason why I thought of this is, I love it, but this person I followed on Instagram, Courtney Shields, is co-founder of a brand called Dibs. So I know I've talked to you guys about this. And so, yes. So they have some of my favorite makeup products, but the reason why I thought of it is because it's now available in Ulta. So before you used to have to order it online. So now her products are available in Ulta. and she's touring, like stopping if in different cities. I shouldn't say touring. Well, I guess it's touring. Goes
Yeah.
stopping off at different Ultas in different cities. And, you know, she is in Chicago right now, and that's my hometown and I love it. And so I was like, oh, Chicago. And I love the product. So I will say my two favorites that I love is she has a brush that it's on one side, it's for like powdered makeup. The other side is for not liquid. Yeah, liquids. And so I never really cared about brushes. Like I'm like one of those people who walks in like Marshalls and sees the like $5.99 brushes. And I'm
Yep.
like, yeah, that's great. That sounds good. I'll just take that. But I swear this brush is amazing. So I will say the brush is worth the money. It is so good. It just blends the products in really well. And then the other thing that they have, it's like a duo side. It's like a stick. And so on one side, it is blush and it's a cream base. And then the other side is like for contouring. And so that product is just amazing. I love it. So Dibs.
Nice.
So that's my love for today is Dibs. And what made me think of it is she's in Chicago and I miss Chicago.
We miss you.
D-I.
Yeah, so it's DIBS. Yeah, so it's
Dibs.
Desert Island
Dibs.
Beauty Status is what it stands for, Dibs. So yeah, so now you can go to Ulta and you can find it there. You don't have to order it online. So you can actually like, which I think is nice, is that you can like look at the different colors. So there's
That
like
is
lots of different
nice.
shades. Because I think it's kind of hard sometimes to like order stuff
It's really
online
hard.
if you can't
Yes.
see it.
Yeah.
So I've kind of figured out just based on like looking at like, you know, different people who tried things on. I was like, okay, I think that's good. But sometimes
Yeah.
you just, it's better to see it in person. So that's my share
Nice.
for today is Dibs.
And, you know, one of the things you had recommended that for me for contouring, and I got also one of the things that's a double-sided thing, but it's supposed to like match your pH for the blush.
Oh, that one? Yeah, she's got one
I
like that. Yeah.
love that.
That
I
one?
actually will put that one on if I'm like, you know, going to, you know, drop off the kids at school and I'm just putting on a little something, and it like just creates that just like little rosy like glow.
Rosy
I love it.
Nice.
I haven't tried
So,
that one. That
yeah,
shade.
I love it.
Well, that's good to know because I was curious. I was like,
Mhm.
I wonder how that works. Okay.
I wouldn't wear it for like, I kind of just liked it as a little like, you just want a little something.
Well,
It
pick
wouldn't
me
be
up.
like, yeah, just a little pick me up. But I do. If I'm like gonna go to yoga or Orange Theory, I'll just like put a little color in the cheeks, and I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that one.
Awesome. All right. So today we're going to be talking about phone use, social media use, in any kind of screen time, really, in both kids and adults. And so I wanted to start off by just sharing some stats because I thought this was interesting because I wondered, like, what's the average amount of time
Oof.
that adults spend on their phone each day? Have you guys looked this up?
I know what mine tells me every
Okay,
week.
right. But have you guys looked it up at all? Do you guys know? If you
No,
looked it up, don't
no.
say. Okay, what do you think it is? Take a guess.
Hours per
Ugh.
day. Is that
Yeah,
the
so
question?
this is the average American
Mhm.
spends on their phone each day.
4
Okay.
is my guess.
6.
6. I was gonna guess 6.
Okay, so this says the average American spends 4 hours and 37 minutes on their phone each day, which is equivalent to 70 days per year. But here it
Oh,
does break down. So,
gross.
so you're not wrong. So, but then they break it down to like generation. So
Oh.
so that's just Americans in general. So Gen Z's 6 hours and 5 minutes per day.
Oh.
Okay.
Baby boomers 3 hours and 31 minutes per day. So
Okay.
so again, that's the average for everybody, but then depending on like your age bracket, you're going to spend more or less
What
time.
about Gen X?
Yeah, I don't have stats for them.
Interesting.
No one cares
So,
about
yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Because we're like that weird kind of.
I'm
We're
like,
probably in the middle. Like what's
Well, we're
between
probably
6 and
4
3.
hours.
We're-
I
Yeah,
was
we're
gonna
probably
say,
4 hours.
Mine
Right.
is usually 4 hours a day.
Yep.
Yes.
Per week. Yeah. Anyway,
Isn't that crazy? That's a lot. So
it doesn't
how do you,
surprise me though that the younger generation is obviously skewing it,
Oh yeah.
right?
and do you know who spends the most amount of time on social media?
I was gonna say
Women in their
women.
40s.
No, women age
Women
16.
in their
No, women age 16 to 24.
perimenopause
Oh.
search.
No, social media. So
No,
it's women age
social
16 to
media.
24. Social media. Sorry. Yeah, that was social media
Oh,
specific.
yeah. Women.
was
Oh, yeah. Young
16
girls.
to 24. Yeah,
Oh,
young girls.
oh yeah,
Yep.
that makes sense.
Oh, that's awful.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I will say to kick this off, this is Terry, that I have tried to dramatically shift both my screen time and my social media usage since The Anxious Generation was published a couple months ago. And
Yep.
what was really a wake-up call for me is the fact that my oldest child is 9. And while we are ideally, hopefully, waiting until high school to get a smartphone, obviously social media after that, that is a mere few years away. And the
Mhm.
reality being what my husband and I do in our household matters 100 times more than what we say.
Mhm.
And having
Absolutely.
my cell phone ever present in my hands, even
Mhm.
when legitimately more than 50% of the time it's likely work related,
Yep.
doesn't matter. My husband and I joke with each other. We'll say, doesn't matter. Being on your phone's being on your
Right.
phone.
Right.
And what I have found helpful for myself is just deleting some of the apps. Like I will delete Instagram for
Right.
a couple weeks or even a month or two, or even just a week. Because if the app is there, it's Pavlovian. It's almost automatic. Oh, I'm in line at the grocery store. I'm in line at Target. I'll just check this out. And so what's been huge for me, at least, is the recognition that there is two people actually. I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old in my house, and time goes by so quickly, especially in parenting
Mhm.
land, that I know
Mhm.
we are going to be navigating, even if we follow appropriate boundaries, we're still going to be navigating it very soon. And I
Mhm.
have to force myself to do better. That being said, I am also very thankful that I often joke, I don't know if I would have gotten a PhD if social media and cell phones, I mean, what a distraction. Imagine trying to write a
Oh yeah,
Right.
dissertation
absolutely.
with
Right.
social media around. I am so thankful for having a childhood and adolescence and even young adulthood without any of those available, but they also are sort of like brain candy. I mean, I certainly find
Absolutely.
right? Like my husband and I put the
Yeah.
kids
I
to
mean, I'm
bed
on.
and we're side by side
Oh yeah.
scrolling our
Mhm.
phones and we
Mhm.
laugh
I mean,
about
I
it.
will
Mhm.
absolutely say that I use my phone way too much. And it's crazy because, like you said, work. So I feel like it started off with work. So like when I opened my own private practice, you're solo, right? Like you need your
Yep.
clients. You have this like drive to, answer right away because they could go find someone else, right? So
Yes.
like
Right.
constantly checking my email.
Yep.
But you're right, it doesn't matter if it's, work or not work, they see you on your phone.
Right.
And my daughter is 7, and I think last year when she was 6, she started asking me, when do I get a phone? And I was like,
Oh, yeah.
uh-oh. Like she's already
Mm.
asking. So we've already had a conversation. We've already starting that conversation about when you're getting a phone. And I told her, well, when you're a teenager, when you're high school. And she said, oh, you mean 18? And I said, yes,
Sounds
yes,
good.
when
Yes.
you're 18. So, and I know that
Yep.
that's not realistic, 18. But we're already having that conversation about this is not something you're going to get as a kid, right? Or even a preteen. She knows that we need to be older to get it. And I've been trying to be more mindful too of not having my phone all the time with me or in my hand. I've been trying to, like, when she gets home from school, to like put it away,
Mhm.
and not be like, oh, I just got to do one more work thing. I just
Right.
got to do,
Mhm.
and it's hard. It's so
It
hard. It's
is.
so hard.
It is so hard. And so my daughter is 12. She started middle school this year. And I will say the majority of her friends got cell phones over the summer.
Yep.
Yep.
So summer
And
before 6th grade.
mhm,
Mhm.
yep. Um,
So these are like 11 to 12 year
11,
olds.
yeah, 11 to
Yep.
12 year olds. Maddie's an old 12. So like
Right.
she's the first. So most of them are 11.
Mhm.
And my daughter knew because I've been telling her forever that she's not getting a
Yep.
smartphone
Yep.
until she is older. So she knew she wasn't going to get one. But then we started running into there are no home phones anymore. So
Right.
there's no pay phones anymore. So now she's taking the bus. She's wanting to see if she can be with friends. And there's no way that she can call me without, like, I used to use the like school phone, the office,
Right.
the phone in
Mhm.
the office. There isn't thing there. That doesn't happen. So we ended up getting my daughter an old school flip phone. Oh,
Yep.
yes.
That's great.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah.
She
Dumb.
loves
They
it.
call it a dumb phone.
Yep. And she
Mhm.
loves it. She
Yeah.
feels like she's so excited. She gets to call, she gets to text her friends still. Like she can still send a little, she does it with the like, press the number 3 times to get the letter and, old school. She loves it. So it gives her that she's able to call, she's able to, but she's not, that's it. It's not anything else because I was like, nope, we're not starting this yet. We're not staring at the screen just yet.
That
It's
provides the
hard.
autonomy that she needs at that age, but without that
Yep.
full access, unrestricted access.
But
Yeah.
it's interesting what you said. why aren't schools allowing kids to go to the office and use their phone? And that's going to have to shift
Right.
Mhm.
back to being allowed as hopefully, and at least in my personal world, I've seen, my boys' school has banned cell phones from the school. Not only goes up to 8th grade, but they are encouraging kids, if you need to make a call, our office is available. We're going to
Yeah.
need more of that
nice.
within schools across, well, not just the United States. I mean, this is going on in developed countries.
Mhm.
All the statistics are all over the place that we're all, too married to our technology. But we're going to need more of that ability, like you were saying. If she can't go to the office and say, can I make a quick call to my mom about how I'm getting home, right? I want to go
Yep.
with this friend and not on the bus or something like that, that's going to be a detriment to encouraging groups of people, because that's what we're going to need, right? Because that's what has
Yep.
caused all of this, is, like you said, seeing everybody in her age group, her class, getting a phone, right?
Yep.
So in order to kind of shift the narrative, I think what Terry started off with, the behavior at home, of course,
Yep.
that's
The parents-
paramount. That's number one. What parents are
number
doing,
one.
kids pay attention to. All habits, right? And
Mm.
our phones are becoming one of those things, right? So if parents sit on the couch all night long, kids pay attention to that. If parents say, let's go for a walk after dinner, that just is a habit that gets built into their brain, right? Same with the phone, right? But it can't just be the parents. It's got to be sort of this collective push toward
Community
shifting
culture.
the narrative.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
have to, right? And it's
Yeah.
not, it's because now we have the research.
We
Right.
didn't before. It was
Even though
hypothesized.
it was more anecdotal, right? You're
Right.
like,
We all
I
just
think,
said, like, it seems like it's not
It's not.
great.
Now we know.
Remember that article that came out? This was a couple of years ago, and I know we've all referenced it in our actual private practice with families. There was a study that came out that was talking about, why aren't kids getting meeting their milestones in adolescence like they used
Driver's
to be. It was about
license,
driver's
and
license
such. Yes.
and part-time jobs,
Yep.
right? And there was anecdotal evidence at the time that sitting in their beds and looking at a screen was becoming a problem. But there was also quite a bit of information in that particular research about, are we putting too much pressure on academics, extracurriculars? These kids don't have time to do these other, developmental tasks. But now we've got the research. We didn't have it then. Now we know how horrible it is for all ages, right?
Right.
Yes.
Mental health, physical health, etc.
Well,
For
and
everybody.
speaking
Sleep,
of
it impacts your sleep.
right, and your sleep, and one thing that
Yes.
Jonathan Haidt, I've heard him say a few times is, and I think about this often, is once you put that device in front of them, it never goes away for the rest of their life.
For the rest of their lives.
And
Yep.
I think about
He
how
just was talking with.
He just did this. He
Yes,
just
yes.
posted this.
I
And-
sent it. Link it to
right,
you guys.
yeah.
Yes.
and,
That was it.
and so the fact that smartphones, the iPhone came out when I was 27 years old, I was able to go almost
Right.
30 years
Right.
reaching full
Without
brain
it.
maturation, having tons of rich,
Right.
wonderful life experiences without that addition, and even giving it to them at 13 or 14 when their prefrontal cortex in certain areas of their brain still has a lot more maturation to go.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
still, it's still going to be a very different experience for them, because once we put that in front of them, it's there,
Yep.
for, not to be dramatic, but for the rest of their lives.
For the rest of their lives. Yeah.
And
Right.
He mentioned, you mentioned
Yeah.
the other day that he calls iPhones experience blockers. And I
Yep.
love that.
And I think that's true for
that
all
is
of
exactly
us.
what it is.
yeah, and I think
Yes.
it's
Oh,
true
it
for adults.
absolutely is.
And
Yes.
this is going to be
All of us.
a weird stat that I just looked up. But when you talk about that teenagers aren't hitting the traditional teen milestones, think
Yep.
of John Hughes movies, right? Like the different
Yeah.
teen milestones. Sex rates among teenagers having sex are the lowest they have ever been, because they would prefer.
Because
Yeah,
they're not
they're not in
together.
person.
Because you can't have sex
have
unless
sex.
you're together.
Yeah, you must be in the same
Right.
room to have sex. And
That's
yeah,
fascinating.
it fell even from 2019 to 2021. So there's COVID. It fell from 38 to 30% of high school students who reported ever having sex. And that is atypical. Now, some researchers will say some of these milestones, like drinking alcohol, experimenting with recreational drugs, use of
Right.
nicotine, which is, it's not really cigarettes anymore, it's vaping, which is a whole nother
Right.
conversation. Those
yeah.
rates, so vaping is up, but alcohol use is also lower than ever. So in some ways, it's not always a bad thing, but there's other milestones, like Lauren had mentioned, when it comes to driving a car, wanting to drive a
Yep.
car, getting a part-time
Yes.
job, having sex with your
Yep.
boyfriend or
Moving out of
girlfriend.
the house.
Yes,
Right.
there's
Yes.
milestones that are
Oh
being
my gosh.
impeded because people have these experience blockers, but they don't even, I don't think younger people even know what they're missing. They don't know what they don't know.
Right. Because they
Right.
they have never experienced that. So they don't understand what they're missing out on.
Right.
I was just recently watching where they did this like experiment with teenagers. And so they took the phone away from them and they said, because it's not just taking the phone away, it's also increasing autonomy, right? And
Right.
independence.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so they
Encouraging
were saying,
independence.
so they took this group of teenagers and they took their phones away and they
Yep.
sent them camping alone.
Yes. I saw this.
Yes.
Yep.
I saw this
They
Yep.
too.
sent them
Yeah.
camping alone. And so they were basically like, there was no adult there. They were like, they're all
Mhm.
16-year-olds and they're like, you're going to go
Mhm.
camping. And so they went camping and then they interviewed the kids afterwards. And, they all had such a positive experience
Yes.
together. And then when they got their phones back, they were talking about how they felt like they didn't need to be on the phone all the time,
Mhm.
which was really great. And I
Right.
was like, so that's part of it too. It's not just saying you can't be on the phone, you don't get a phone. It's also facilitating then these social interactions with
Right.
kids, right?
Right.
I was just this morning at a talk and came up about kids like social development, and they're like, oh, these kids these days, they just don't know how to, and it's because of COVID. And I was
Oh,
listening, and I was like, COVID certainly played a role, but I would not say that it's COVID. I think that catapulted some kids, more into the
it
social
furthered
media,
it.
further into it. But that's not why these kids are having such a hard time, with their social development.
and
I
it's been
really
4.5
the
years.
phones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
So when I hear
Yes.
that drives me nuts a little bit because
Oh,
I agree with you. In that moment, if they were in a particular developmental stage in the spring of 2020, it did impact their development at that particular stage. But 4.5 years later, to be utilizing that as a reason why social development now is impeded at whatever particular stage it's just not true.
right.
Right. And
Yes.
so to your point, I think we're looking for the easy button,
Mm-hmm.
but we
Mhm.
know
Yes.
the stats. And so the question I want to ask you guys is, okay, so we know it. I know this is fairly recent, but we actually have not just anecdotal, real good statistics from Jonathan's book. So why aren't we immediately changing what we're doing? Why aren't we immediately breaking the bad habits?
So I think I think people are scared. I think people don't want to do the work. And
Yes.
I'm talking about myself included.
100%.
I mean,
Mhm.
I know all of the things.
Mhm.
I know all of the things, and it's still really hard. And
Yeah.
I have, there was a documentary that came out a few years ago, Netflix, The Social Dilemma.
Mhm.
And it was like all of the tech people who had developed these phones, developed the social media, had basically said, like, we made this addictive. Like, we made it this way. And they talk about they try not to use cell phones. They don't give their kids cell phones. Like,
Right.
this isn't like Jonathan Haidt's book is giving us the data, but this is not new news.
Right.
And I remember telling people to watch The Social Dilemma, and they would be like, "Ooh, I know, but I just can't."
Right.
And I think can't. And I think it's that if they know it, like really know it, then they'll feel like they have to do something. And so it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, I know it's not great, but it is the easy button. I mean, it's the,
Well,
Well, I think it starts off with like obviously us, but I think also there's this big parents. I think there's a couple things going on with parents. Parents don't want to be the bad guy.
yep.
They don't want to be the one to tell their teenager, you're not going to get this. Or, people are like, well, they already have it. And it's like, okay, well, then you can take it away.
You can
And
set
then they're just like,
boundaries.
what? Like,
Right.
take it away. And so they don't want to be put in that position. And then I think for some of the parents of younger kids, it makes their life easier.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
like being able to just say, here, take this tablet right now, because then I don't have to deal with, a behavior problem.
Mhm.
We've all
or,
done
We
it.
can sit
yeah,
through a
absolutely.
dinner and have an extra glass of wine.
Exactly.
We've
So
all done it.
it makes
We've all done
you
it. You're right. We've all done it.
we've all been there, right?
Yep.
And so it is, I feel like people don't want to be, putting themselves in these situations because it's like
Uncomfortable.
life is already hard, right? And so it's like now I have
Right.
to change the way that I've been doing things. And yeah, I think it makes people really uncomfortable.
Well, and from a psychological perspective, we know that it's an actual chemical change in the brain when we
Yeah.
when we create a habit, right?
Yes.
Right.
Any bad habit, good or bad, right? It
Right.
changes our brain, and we get that little comfort from engaging in a
Mhm.
habit, whether it's a
Mhm.
productive habit or not, and release a dopamine, right? And
Mhm.
so we
Yep.
have to actually chemically change what we're doing. And
Yeah.
that's the hard,
It is.
right? It's
Yep. It
when
is.
people are like, this happens all the time. The four of us have had this conversation offline a number of times about our practices, and specifically those of us that evaluate and provide the recommendation about sleep hygiene
Oh,
to families.
yes. Oof.
So whether it's the teenager, often it's a recommendation about sleep hygiene for parents and teenagers, for the teenager, but even adults that I evaluate, and I'm sure you guys have run into this, Vanessa and Terry, as well. It is unbelievable, the resistance
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, a
I get
million
immediately
excuses. I mean,
about why I can't change
yes.
what I do in my bed.
Yes.
I've got to watch my Netflix. I've got to do my homework
wanna
on my
know-
phone. I have to FaceTime my boyfriend.
Mhm.
It's like,
They're
why
like, do
are
you
we
have
meeting
any
with
other
such resistance?"
strategies besides what we know works?
Right. Is there anything else we could do?
They're
Right.
basically
so we
yeah.
know that it's hard to change a bad habit, but it's just so interesting. We've all been there. It is difficult, right? There's
Yeah.
a reason that smoking still exists.
Right.
We've had
Yeah.
that data forever, right? And yes, it's shifted and it's changed and it's lessened, right? The percentages, but it's still there. We all have our things
Yep.
that make us
Right.
comfortable, and we don't like being uncomfortable. And so I think as a human experience, we can all appreciate that technology and phones are something that make us comfortable.
And what
That's
I've
right.
often heard
And
is
also know we got to change it.
right.
Right.
What Vanessa touched on, what I've heard from parents of teens and young adults, and mainly teens, I'm thinking of 12, 13, 14, 15, sort of this little bracket of when a lot of kids are getting phones and or access to social media, but it's before high school. So let's say 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. The parents will say either one of two things. Oh, the toothpaste is already out of the tube. Not going to go back. We already got them the phone. But again, what
Ugh.
Vanessa and Lauren are speaking to, it's hard. They don't want to have to be uncomfortable, and they don't have to do some hard parenting. And parenting is really,
Right.
really hard, whether it's phone
So hard.
or not a
So
phone,
hard.
right?
And it doesn't matter
Right.
how old they are.
It's hard.
Right.
Hard.
So
It's hard.
It never
Choose-
gets
right,
easier.
and
It's
choose-
just all it's all hard.
Choose your
Yeah.
choose your hard. Do you want to be
Right.
dealing? So
Right.
which hard are you willing to
Right.
deal with as a parent?
That's great.
And
Yep.
then
It's one
the
of my
other
favorite phrases.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the other phrase
I
I,
would
keep
say-
coming back
Oh,
to
go ahead.
is like, now that we know
No.
better, it's time to do better.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we all. And so we are here to say that like we are all in it with you because
Yep.
we all need to do better, including the four of us.
All,
Absolutely.
definitely.
And I
I
would say,
keep trying
even
to
though
see
it's a
that number
little,
go down per week, and I'm
Right.
like, it's not moving.
I
It's not going down.
I would say, even though it is a little counterintuitive, I will acknowledge that, but there is a lot of good information on Jonathan Haidt's website and his Instagram profile about how to do this. The other thing I would plug is the Wait Till 8
Oh
campaign.
yeah.
They've been doing great work for a while.
We're doing that
I
with
don't-
our schools.
I don't think people really totally understood what it is, but it's this campaign. If everybody could band together in different communities, parents band together and not give phones until 8th grade.
Right.
Yep.
So I would say, if you are looking for more information and feeling, or you can contact us. We've got it all. We talk about it all. It's sort of
Yep.
important to all of us. But there are some really good, online resources for that piece. Just
And
do
the
it
wait-
separate from your kids.
Absolutely. And the wait until 8th is great. We're doing this in our community. And what's wonderful about it is if you can kind of spread the word, when you sign up, if you feel like take the pledge for your kid and put their school in, you'll actually get an email once you get I feel like it's 10 families. There's a certain number of families. If they all do it, you'll be like, you're all in this together and you actually get
Aw,
it. So some
that's
of our
sweet.
classes already in the elementary school have gotten that. And so it's really awesome to see. It's a great, it's a, go onto the website. They have tons of information.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, that was a super great chat today. I think we talked about all the things that we had kind of thought we were going to talk about and we're hoping to talk about. Lauren, you mentioned that if anybody ever wanted to reach out to us, you can email us. The email is theshrinkdown.podcast@gmail.com if you ever want to reach out. Thank you so much for listening today. We hope you join us next time on The Shrink Down.
Pieces, if there's multiple kids in the family, if older siblings got a phone at say age 12, it becomes the culture in that little immediate family. And some of those kids were COVID kids, right? So they were somewhat isolated. Oh, my older sister got a phone at 12, so I'm going to get a phone at 12. And the parents don't want to have that battle to say, you know what? We might have goofed with our oldest and we probably were premature. It was during COVID. We know better now. Like we said, we know better. We should do better. It's time to do better. So for you, it is going to be high school. And I know that's really disappointing and you have a right to be mad. Here's your dumb phone. Here's your smartwatch. Here's, it's not, I think where people have been somewhat confused, and I hope Jonathan Haidt will continue to amplify this message. It's not all or nothing. It is not smartphone, social media, or no devices, nothing. It is watches. It is dumb phones. It is any devices in between as you're waiting for the brain to mature more before you expose it to certain stimuli where they can have that independence and autonomy and text with their friends and have that independence. We all want our kids to become more independent.
Right.
But
But
also,
it even starts off younger too, just to tag on to what you're saying. It's even the iPad in the little ones, right? Like the amount of, like it starts there. So like even before the phone becomes, you know, something that they want, it starts with the iPad and this, you know, what little ones are watching, right? So that's where I think it starts.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it has to be paired with what you were saying now that we know, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And it has to be just these small changes that we make with technology use, both for us as we're modeling it, us as adults in general, whether you have children or not, right? As well as for kids. But it has to be what Vanessa said early, pairing it with these play-based activities, right? And experiences. And when I say play, I mean, that goes for adolescents and adults as well. It's utilizing a phone to say, let's make a plan to meet. Let's make a plan to have our kids get together and make sure there are no phones and they're putting them in the box. And all the parents know that, right? So all these teenagers are going over to my house tonight and we are putting phones in a box and I will have my phone on if you need to get in touch with me. But those teenagers are not going to sit next to each other on their phones and look at social media, post things, whatever. They're going to have some sort of experience, right?
That's what you're doing, Wilhelmina, right?
This just, So when my daughter's friends started getting phones, I saw kind of an immediate shift when they would come over because I'd been seeing them come over and play for years. And all of a sudden I was starting to see they were on the phone, they were this, and I was like, no. And I immediately went onto Etsy and bought myself a unplugged box where it's right in the front door. And the kiddos put the phone in the box. I always say, like, let your parent know I'm here. At this point, all the parents have my cell phone too.
Yep.
Or if you need to text your parent, you can of course go to the phone and text them. And then I say, go play. And I literally have seen them just sitting there staring at the screen. Then I make them put the phones in and suddenly they're playing games, they're
talking
doing
to each other.
make-believe, they're talking. And I was
love
just
it.
like, it makes me so happy.
I love it.
But it is uncomfortable to be the person
that's
that's like,
mom. You're that mom.
I don't want to be that mom. I'm like, and I keep joking. I'm like, I love that they want to come here. I hope that now that I'm going to be that mom, they won't stop coming. And then I was like, they can come here and they can eat the junk food. They can watch, like when they're a little older, they can come here and watch the R-rated movies. Like I'll be that parent, right? Like, but like just get off the screen. Like I'll give you other little fun ways that you can, So, but it's a risk I'm taking, but I just feel so strongly about it that
think it's,
gotta
and
do it.
I think it's worth
hopefully
it.
there will be a shift in parents in our worlds and parents everywhere, that it will be that you're not the only mom,
Right.
that it's more of a majority for moms and dads and parents everywhere to say, we're putting that away, let's do
Mhm.
this,
Mhm.
The
right?
more
But
you
it,
can share that, hopefully then other parents will say, oh, that's a
I
good
think it's
idea.
a
Let me
great
do
idea.
It might
I
empower
think one of the
them.
things I
Yeah.
think one of the things that we should talk a little bit more about, why are we saying that we shouldn't be using
I was
the social
thinking the
media,
same
phones? Yeah.
thing.
So I think we've kind of commented on, like, it's definitely impacting, teens, kids' ability to like interact socially.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen young people like trying to like, interview or ask a question.
Oh.
And it's like, have you ever talked to a human being before? Like,
Mhm.
no eye contact. They're so
Mhm.
nervous. So why don't we spend a few minutes just talking about, like, what do we know about, why are we saying this?
Mhm.
I
Like,
have the stats if you'd like,
love
from
them.
his book, from Jonathan's books. Okay, so couple of infographics talking about young adults. So those that are of he terms it undergraduate age. So let's say like that 18 to 24-year-old range, 134% increase in anxiety since 2010, 106% increase in depression since 2010, and 72% increase in ADHD.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Since
that's a big one.
2010 as well. And he does go through another, a couple of other things. Everything has increased: bipolar disorder, anorexia, schizophrenia, substance abuse. But specifically his data
Schizophrenia,
really,
interesting.
it's interesting, right? 67% increase.
Hmm.
Now I think there's a little bit of, are we diagnosing better? Are we catching it earlier?
Yeah.
Those kinds of
Yeah,
things with
there's other
some of these
factors.
other diagnoses. But his I would say a big focus of the data is anxiety, depression.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then those things that can be kind of secondary to that, like eating disorders, things like that, because of what we're seeing on social media. Anxiety specifically, there's been 139% increase in that 18 to 25-year-old range, 103% increase 26 to 34-year-olds, 52% increase 35 to 49-year-olds, and people 50 years and older. There's actually been a decrease, and that would probably be in line with what Vanessa was saying earlier about that boomer generation is on the phone less.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're actually getting out in the world and doing things. That's a great thing, maybe taking care of their health in different ways. So that's actually good information, but that's why we're talking about it. Right. It's
Right.
not just because that, we're real big supporters of this book and we want to do different, right, for our kids. It's really, there are real data that show we're seeing it in our practices
On a daily
Yeah,
basis,
absolutely.
it's
we are
and
navigating
it's sometimes
this.
even harder to see where it came from.
Yes.
Right.
We've
We
been seeing it
talk.
for years. We've been talking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
this. The four of us
Oh,
have been
yes.
talking about this for years. So that's
Absolutely.
when we're so thankful that
Yeah.
Height's book came out and we're
Yes.
like, this is what we've been seeing. This
Yeah.
is it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's
Yeah.
And
interesting,
it's not just the kids. And I think that's the
Yes.
cute.
yes,
It's adults
Yep.
too.
it's both.
There are higher rates of anxiety,
Full-grown
depression in
adults.
adults
Yes.
as well. It's negatively impacting all of us.
All of us.
Yeah.
Well,
All of us.
and you mentioned the year was 2010, since if we track back the
Yes.
data,
Yes.
and what
Yep.
Haidt mentions in his book is the iPhone came out, it was released in 2007, the Android was released in 2008. The phones became more prolific
Yep.
and got in everybody's hands by like 09,
Well, and the
09-ish, 08,
two-way
09.
camera.
That was a huge piece.
The
Yes.
two-way camera is 2010. So that was when the significant increase in
Selfies.
Facebook and Instagram, so social media platforms, it changed from posting photo albums.
Yeah.
All us
Mhm,
old people
mhm.
do on
Oh, yeah.
Facebook, right? Like,
Pictures
here's
from
my
one
trip
Friday night.
to the- right.
Yeah.
45 pictures from the bar.
Yeah.
Right. It changed to in the moment pictures, selfies.
Yeah.
Right. I was about to say
they
that
were
it's
doing
different
in the
though.
moment.
Yes,
That was the
because we
shift.
were like taking our pictures and then you'd upload them
Mhm.
later.
Yes.
and it
days
would take forever.
later. Right.
Now
We'd
it's
be
like
in the
instant.
moment.
You guys
Yes.
remember when we were on our trip, this last trip, and we went to that bar and there was music? All of the young girls were sitting on the couches on their phones.
Yes.
And the four of us were dancing on the dance floor. And
And
we
they
were like,
had on their
what is
phones
happening?
the entire
They
time.
were all taking pictures of themselves and just
Yes.
and like as if they were having fun. And meanwhile, the four of us are like, living it up on the dance floor. It was fascinating to
Yes.
see.
I mean,
Yep.
and going down slides where then we realized, wait, we just went down these crazy like 2-story slide and we didn't get any footage of it. And like we got like one clip of it. We're like, oh well, hey, we had fun. Like it was so great. And that's what they say about phones is actually when you're out and about and you're taking photos for like a memory. Like
Yep.
let's take a photo of the night, like whatever. You're in the moment taking the photo of that moment. But if you are taking photos that you are taking to post, you
Right.
are already out of the moment. You are already thinking about who's going to see it. Is
Right.
it cute enough? Is it good enough? Is it
Mhm.
you literally are out of the moment if you are taking videos and pictures that
Yep.
you are intending for the intention of
Of
posting.
posting.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That makes
So
total
there
sense.
has been,
Yes, total sense.
there has been sort of this like retro I don't know, moment. What do we call it? Have you noticed that people are getting like the disposable cameras
Yes.
for different
Oh,
events?
Yes. Yes.
Right. But you know what's so
Yes.
funny about that? I love that idea, right? Because then you just have to take the picture and it is what it is, right? But if you still have your phone and you're taking, right? So there has to be sort of, okay, if we're going to do this, let's put our phones away and use the disposable and really kind of be in the moment, to your point.
Right.
There's a lot of work to be done.
There is.
Mhm.
Any
Yeah.
last thoughts on today's topic?
The